You look around and everything seems normal. The lights are still on, the internet still works, the stores are still open, but deep beneath the surface, something has shifted. You can feel it. It's like the foundations of a building, once firm and solid, are beginning to crack, ever so slightly. Most won't notice. Most don't want to notice. But those who have eyes to see, they sense it. The system is failing, not just one system, but the entire structure we've built our lives upon. The financial system, the social order, the political machine, the digital realm, all of it is trembling, not with a loud collapse, but with the subtle warning creaks before the fall. We've been told for years that progress is inevitable, that technology will save us, that the right leaders, the right laws, the right innovations will usher in a golden age. But what happens when all those promises fail? What happens when the very things we've trusted begin to betray us? You see, we've replaced the eternal with the temporary. We've built our cities on sand and celebrated the architecture, forgetting that storms were always coming. July 2025 won't announce its warnings on television. It won't come with headlines that say, "Prepare, the ground is shifting." No, judgment never advertises itself. It moves quietly, strategically, and if your ears aren't tuned to the frequency of truth, you'll miss it. The world is still running, but the engine is seizing up. There's a fault line beneath the system, and the shaking has already begun. The stock market may still rise and fall with numbers, but the trust behind it is eroding. Currencies across the globe are built on confidence, not substance. And when that confidence is shaken, collapse follows. Governments argue and scheme, but the very idea of leadership is rotting from within. We've turned politics into theater and truth into manipulation. We legislate chaos and then wonder why peace escapes us. And technology, this digital tower of Babel we've built, is no longer serving us. We serve it. We've become slaves to the machine, addicted to screens, disconnected from reality, and more anxious than any generation before us. It's not just that the systems are failing, it's that they were never built to last. They were never eternal. They were built on pride, on rebellion, on the belief that we could sustain ourselves without God. And just like every empire that came before, Babylon, Egypt, our modern empires are following the same path. The same arrogance, the same self-glorification, the same judgment, but here's the thing. God doesn't destroy what he hasn't warned. He always sends signs, always gives a window, always extends mercy before the collapse. July is part of that window, a month that will bring tremors, not just in the markets, not just in governments, but in the hearts of men. A wake-up call dressed as a news story, a divine warning wrapped in worldly confusion. Many will explain it away, some will mock it, but the few, the remnant, they will recognize the sound, they will hear the faint groaning of the foundations, and they will prepare. And when the shaking comes, those who built on sand will fall. But those who built on the rock will stand. That's the dividing line. That's the key. We're not being warned so we can panic. We're being warned so we can realign. God is not calling us to hide in fear, but to rise in truth. To let go of what was never stable in the first place and grab hold of what cannot be shaken. Some will say, "You're being dramatic. Things always go up and down." But this is not just another cycle. This is not business as usual. When moral law collapses, economic collapse is never far behind. When spiritual decay spreads, societal structures follow. It's not random, it's patterned, it's prophetic. So don't look at July and say, "Oh, another month." Look at it and ask, what is being revealed? What cracks are starting to widen? What idols are beginning to fall? What false hopes are finally being exposed for what they are? The system isn't just malfunctioning, it's being exposed, and exposure always comes before judgment. You can't fix a foundation that's already rotted. You tear it down and build anew. That's what's coming. And while the world panics over the collapse, the people of God must prepare for the rebuilding. Because after the fall of every man-made tower, God always plants a remnant to build what lasts. The question is not, will the shaking come? It's already here. The question is, will you stand when everything else falls? They used to say, seeing is believing. But in the days we're walking into, especially this very hour, that no longer holds true. Because we are living in a time when truth is no longer clear, when reality is no longer trusted, and when deception has taken the throne. And July will only accelerate what has already been set into motion, the rise of confusion. A spiritual fog, thick and choking, now blankets the earth, and what makes it more dangerous than any enemy we can see is that most people don't even realize it's there. They walk in it daily, breathe it in, speak it, repost it, defend it, without knowing they've become blind. We've entered an age of confusion not by accident, but by intention. You remove truth from a generation, and what rushes in to fill the void is not freedom. It's bondage masquerading as freedom. It's darkness wearing the costume of light. And once that confusion takes root, the lines begin to blur. What was once clearly right becomes questionable. What was once clearly wrong becomes celebrated. And slowly, steadily, the world begins to lose its grip on reality. And I tell you this not to stir fear, but to open eyes. Confusion is not just a side effect of culture. It is a weapon, it is strategic, it is ancient, and it is spiritual. In the beginning, the serpent didn't strike Eve with a sword. He struck her with a question. Did God really say? And from that one seed of doubt the fall began. The same tactic is being used again, just in a more sophisticated form. Today it doesn't come as a whisper in the garden. It comes through the glow of a screen. It comes in the form of propaganda, entertainment, policies, redefinitions, slogans. It comes when evil is rebranded as virtue and virtue is shamed as hate. When children are taught confusion as education. When the sacred is mocked and the profane is praised, and you watch this happen and something in your spirit starts to grieve, even if your mind doesn't fully understand why. That's the Holy Spirit bearing witness that what you're seeing is not just social shift, it's spiritual war. The problem is not that people are lost, it's that they no longer know they're lost. The problem is not just that deception exists, it's that it's now dressed up in beauty, intelligence, compassion, and progress. And the most dangerous lies are the ones closest to the truth. They twist just enough to sound noble, but lead just far enough to destroy. In July, that fog will thicken. The narrative will grow louder. More contradictions, more redefinitions, more delusion. And it will happen so fast that unless you are deeply rooted in truth, you will begin to question what you once knew was right. That's what's coming. Not just persecution from outside, but confusion from within. Even believers will begin to stumble if their foundation is not strong. Even pulpits may echo the confusion if they are not aligned with the Word. But here's the hope. Even in the fog, there's a way through, and the key isn't to fight the darkness with more darkness. It's to shine the light. You don't argue with confusion. You cut through it with truth. The Word of God doesn't stutter. It doesn't evolve with culture. It stands when all else bends. That's how you overcome, not by shouting louder than the world, but by standing more firmly than it. By living with such clarity, such conviction, such peace, that the confused are drawn to you not because you blend in, but because you stand out. And understand this, the goal of the enemy is not just to deceive, it's to divide. Confusion breeds division. It breaks families, splits churches, separates nations, because a divided house cannot stand. But those who are grounded, who walk not by sight but by faith, not by emotion but by discernment, those are the ones who will remain. So if you feel overwhelmed by the noise, by the pressure, by the shifting winds of culture, good, that means you're awake. But don't stop there. Go deeper. Anchor yourself in what never changes. Feed on the Word like your life depends on it, because it does. Surround yourself not with voices that echo the world, but with those who speak eternal truth. And above all, pray for discernment like never before. In this hour, it's not a luxury, it's a necessity, because when confusion rises, only those with clear vision can lead. Only those who see through the fog can guide others out of it. And this month, this July, may just be the moment that you're not called to follow, but to lead. There are moments in history when everything seems to tremble. Not just the ground beneath our feet, but the very structure of life. The things we've counted on, the systems we've trusted, the routines we've built our lives around, they begin to rattle. And for those who are paying attention, those who are listening, not just with ears but with their spirit, they hear something beneath it all, the sound of shaking. Not chaos for chaos' sake, but something deeper. A warning, a trumpet, a wake-up call from heaven to earth. And make no mistake, July will be a month marked by that sound. Things will move, not always in the way the headlines expect. Sometimes it will be subtle. Other times it will be sudden. It may come through storms or through silence, through the markets or the streets, but it will come, and it will not be random, because there's a shaking that doesn't come from man or nature. It comes from the throne. It is a divine shaking, not to destroy, but to reveal, not to punish, but to awaken. Scripture says that everything that can be shaken will be shaken, so that what cannot be shaken will remain. That's not poetic language. That's reality, and if you haven't felt it already, you will. Because the things we once thought were immovable, our institutions, our freedoms, our normals, are being tested, and what is true is being separated from what is counterfeit. This is not just disruption, this is exposure. God is not interested in maintaining illusions. He is after truth. He is after hearts, and sometimes, to get our attention, He allows the shaking. There will be events this month that seem out of rhythm. Things that don't make sense. Sudden instability in places once considered safe, global movements, cultural jolts. And while the world scrambles to fix it, explain it, or ignore it, the people of God must understand the purpose behind it. The shaking isn't to destroy us, it's to wake us. It's to call us back, because when everything's comfortable, we forget. We drift, we fall asleep spiritually, but when the ground moves, we remember how fragile we really are. And we remember who is not. It's in the shaking that false securities are stripped away. The illusion of control vanishes. You realize the job, the bank account, the comfort, the technology. None of it can hold you when the ground gives way. Only one thing can, and that's the point. We were never meant to trust in systems. We were never meant to build our lives on man-made stability. Those were tools, not foundations, but now the foundations are being tested, and some will collapse. And yet, in the collapse, there is mercy, because it's not judgment for the sake of destruction. It's mercy for the sake of redirection. God is shouting where we wouldn't listen. He's shaking what we refused to let go of. Because He loves us too much to let us sleep through eternity, and if it takes a storm to bring us back to the ark, then so be it. If it takes a tremor to bring us to our knees, then blessed be the shaking. You see, every great move of God is preceded by a shaking. Before the Red Sea split, the people of Israel were trapped between Pharaoh and the deep. Before Pentecost, there was confusion, fear, and uncertainty. Before revival, there is always pressure. Before awakening, there is always discomfort. So what we see this month, as unsettling as it may be, is not a sign that God is absent. It's proof that He's at work. But here's the warning: when the shaking comes, don't cling to what's falling. Don't fight to save what God is removing. Let go. Step onto the rock. Trust the unshakable one. Because those who try to hold on to the old structures, the broken systems, the false comforts, they'll be buried beneath them. But those who release it all and say, "Lord, rebuild me on truth," they'll rise. So as you see the ground trembling, the systems failing, the news shifting from one panic to another, don't panic, don't fear. Let it drive you deeper. Let it purify you. Let it refine your faith, because what's being shaken is temporary. But what's being revealed is eternal. The question isn't whether the shaking will come. It's whether you'll be found standing when it does. There was a time when evil tried to hide. It worked in the shadows, whispered behind closed doors, operated under the cover of darkness. But that time is over. We are now witnessing something far more brazen. Darkness is no longer hiding. It's marching down the streets. It's being celebrated on screens. It's being taught in schools. It's being printed in legislation. It's coming for the hearts of children, the minds of believers, the foundations of nations, and July will not slow it down. July will push it forward, but don't be surprised, this was foretold. There comes a time in every generation when the restraint is lifted, and what was hidden steps into the open, not because it became stronger, but because the culture became weaker, because the light grew dim, because too many of God's people got tired of standing. They grew silent when they should have spoken. They chose comfort over courage, and when light withdraws, darkness fills the void. You can already feel it, can't you? The moral walls that once held back the flood are crumbling. What was once unthinkable is now normal. What was once shameful is now celebrated. There are voices now, loud and proud, declaring things that would have made past generations weep. And the pressure is mounting. If you don't celebrate the darkness, if you dare to stand apart, you're labeled, you're targeted, you're pushed to the edges. But listen closely, this isn't just political. It's not just cultural. This is spiritual war. This is the spirit of the age rising with boldness because it senses its time is short. And yet, in the same moment, something else is rising. As darkness grows bolder, so must the light. As evil comes forward, so must the righteous, and this is where the remnant comes in. This is where you come in. The days of silent faith are over. The days of private Christianity, of blending in, of avoiding offense, of hiding behind comfortable prayers. Those days have to die. Because the darkness is not hiding anymore, and neither can we. The lion is roaring, and the sheep must no longer live in fear. You were not saved to sit quietly while the world falls apart. You were saved to shine, to speak, to stand, and it will cost you. Let's be honest. The light always pays a price when it steps into darkness. It gets rejected. It gets misunderstood. It gets mocked. But it also gets noticed. And that's the point. God didn't call you to blend in. He called you to break through. And when the world is confused, the light doesn't have to scream, it just has to shine. There will be moments this month when you're tempted to be quiet, tempted to stay silent in a conversation, to scroll past the compromise, to laugh along with the lie. But every time you choose silence over truth, something in your soul shrinks, and every time you choose to stand, even trembling, something in your spirit grows. And you may think no one sees it, you may feel alone, but heaven sees, and you're not alone. In fact, this is the hour the remnant has been waiting for. This is not the time to retreat, it's the time to rise. Because the world doesn't need more agreement, it needs contrast, it needs a light that doesn't flicker, a voice that doesn't echo the culture, a standard that doesn't bend with the wind. And I'll tell you this, the more the darkness grows, the more powerful even a single light becomes. A single candle in a pitch-black room draws every eye. A single voice of truth in a sea of lies carries weight. That's what you're called to be, not a megaphone, but a beacon. Not a warrior of outrage, but a warrior of righteousness. You don't have to rage to resist, you just have to refuse to bow. There is a generation rising now that will not conform. They will not be bought. They will not trade truth for applause, and it may be small. It may be mocked, but it will be mighty, because God always saves the best wine for last. He always raises a remnant, and July may be the month when that remnant begins to roar. So don't fear the boldness of evil. Let it awaken the boldness in you. Let it drive you deeper into truth, stronger in conviction, louder in love, firmer in faith. Because the world doesn't just need to hear the truth, it needs to see it lived. And when it does, when the people of God stop hiding, when they rise with clarity and courage, then the darkness will tremble.